everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from near and far. Welcome back for this week's first DICE Data Center Deep Dive session. For today's discussion, we'll be kicking off our Construction Design and Development mini-series, featuring the players in the sector making moves today. I'd like to give a big shout out and thank you to all of today's speakers and to our sponsor. Today's lead sponsor is Tyndall Corporation. Please note the following housekeeping details for today's webinar. First, to all of our attendees. If you are not presenting today, you are both on mute and without video, so no need to be dressed up for the occasion. There will be plenty of time for questions following the session. Click the box that says Q&A. We will try to get to as many of your questions as possible, but please note that only questions asked in the Q&A section will be answered because we'll likely miss them if they're asked in the chat section. Additionally, throughout the webinar, we'll be sending out polls, giving you, the audience, a chance to share your opinions and help drive the conversation forward. Please participate. And finally, don't worry about taking notes. This webinar will be recorded and sent to you after we conclude, so relax and enjoy the conversation. Now, today's session features a wealth of industry knowledge. Our speakers will include Danny Allen, VP of Mission Critical and Building Infrastructure for DataBank, John Diamond, VP of Engineering for Evoke Data Center Solutions, Rick Waddle, Senior VP of Construction and Development from Stack Infrastructure, and will be moderated by Tim Gainey, Manager of Business Development for Commercial Applications from Tyndall Corporation. Take it away, Tim.
Can you hear me? You can, okay, because I've got something on my screen saying my speaker's not working, so glad that's not the case. So Adam, thank you for assembling this wonderful panel of very experienced folks in the industry, and I want to thank everyone for attending today. I want to start out with introductions. I'm going to go first, and then we'll go clockwise around. So Tyndall Corporation started back in 1963. We've got 6 fully staffed divisions serving the Mid-Atlantic, the Southeast, the entire Gulf Coast states, some of the South, including the entire state of Texas. I've been with Tyndall 23 years, 21 of those years in operations. So Rick, if you want to go next.
Sure. Hi, I'm Rick Waddle, SVP of Development with Stack Infrastructure. We're a digital infrastructure solutions provider, and we're based in Denver and deployed in 8 markets. Been in the industry 20 plus years. Been with Stack for 1.5 years since our inception. Before that, I was with Ponfebros Technologies. They're based in Ashburn, and before that, it was 13 or so years I was with AOL. Danny?
I'm Danny Allen, VP of Mission Critical and Building Infrastructure for DataBank. Been with DataBank 9 years. We currently offer co-location and managed services across 20 sites in 9 different markets. Responsible for new builds and major construction activities. John?
Hi, John Diamond. I'm with Evoke Data Center Solutions, a company that was formed in January 1 of 2019 when they acquired 31 data centers from AT&T worldwide. So we're like one of the oldest startups in the country. I've been in the industry for a long time. I started off 10 years nuclear power operations, 10 years working in enterprise data centers, 10 years consulting services, and now I've got a gig going with Evoke, which is turning out to be a lot of fun.
Great, thanks guys, appreciate the introduction there. So as you all can see, we have a very experienced panel for you today. Yesterday when we were doing our prep call, and they started saying they've been in the industry for 30 years here and 10 years here and 20 years. They don't look it, but each one of them look like they sound like they may have been in the industry for 100 years. So a lot of experience on the panel today. All right, without further ado, let's get started with our innovation and data center construction discussion. So I want to set the stage a little bit. Many discussions these days with data center construction include speed to market and supply chain disruptions. Often when discussing supply chain, the building superstructure is not included since I'm moderating, and that is something I've been doing for 23 years. My experience is in building systems. I'd like to include that in today's discussions. So with that in mind, let's jump into our first question. Our first question will be a little lengthy because in an effort to set the stage, as I said. In terms of speed to market, I would ask, are we asking the right questions? The first question invariably, when you're talking about construction, is what are your lead times? Whether it's coming from a general contractor, architect, engineer, what are your lead times? I think the more important question might be, when can your system turn over the first of the data halls? Many of the buildings that we've been involved in will have 2, 3, 4 data halls, and the very first one's already sold out. So the first progress milestone is to get that first data center turned over, or the data hall turned over. So when can the other trades start their work? For example, in some instances, other systems may be able to be deployed to the site faster than precast. However, almost without fail, precast can turn over the first data hall faster than any other system, quite often by weeks, many times even months, so that the electrical, the HVAC can get started. With that backdrop, are there other systems? Here's the question. Are there other systems that may have longer deployment times, but will decrease the time in hitting significant progress milestones? Feel free to jump in, guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think from my perspective, you know, switchgear and generators have been traditionally the longest lead time, you know, outside of, as you mentioned, the structure itself.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Those are the generators are and switchgear. It's hard to get a slot in the switchgear manufacturing plants anymore, between the COVID experience and, you know, the hyperscalers taking up a lot of the manufacturing. COVID is actually changing the space of manufacturers, right? So you used to be able to put you know, 300 workers in a factory. Now you can put 100 in. So that's going to change how the dynamics are for truly just manufacturing.
Yeah, I think it'll actually be it'll be interesting, Tim, because you know, right now equipment is one of our longest lead times. But as all of us, especially here at Stack, we start our supply chain initiatives and we start to actually focus in on getting our lead times down, maybe it's going to start turning into the building. You know, once our equipment is a known commodity, we know where it's sitting, we have it on order already with our partners, then maybe you'll be the next guy up that's going to be getting fussed at all the time because the building's not ready yet for it.
Well, that's all part of it, right? Is trying to find alternative solutions for constructions. So I'm starting to look more and more at offsite construction so that it doesn't affect my timeline as much, right? I don't have to wait for the equipment to be delivered at the site to get things going for an MEP application. I don't know if you guys are doing that, Danny, at all. You looking on that?
Well, we're not doing a lot of off-site construction. What we have done is looked at the means and methods that we're using for site construction. So a good example of that would be, you know, using cable bus versus pipe and wire.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, our latest BOD is all about modular and off-site construction with modular electric rooms and equipment delivered to the integrators instead of being delivered to the site. Brought onto the site as a biggest component you can get on the site and get hooked up as quick as possible as soon as the building's ready for it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the modular, is that brought on by the, even pre-pandemic, by the labor shortage and construction? Everything from our perspective is easier to do in the plant than it is in the field for many reasons.
Right.
Maybe I shouldn't bring this up, quality. Yeah, no, I think you said it the first time. Look, it's one thing. It's speed to market, right? I mean, at Stack, we're built for one thing. It's to help our customers, right? And our customers' biggest problem is growth. Mm-hmm. And the way they fix growth is with speed to market. So as we write our BODs, as we do everything, as we design our buildings, everything we do is speed to market. And the quicker you can have something ready to deploy, the quicker you can face the building, the quicker you can get your customers online.
Yeah. So along the same lines, I mean, it takes out the equation of all the general conditions or the site conditions that you have to worry about. You know, rainy, snowy days, they're gone now. Quality control, you can even do some pre-commissioning on it, and then set it up and then ship it off, and then you can do a more modified startup commissioning at the site. It's there's a lot of interesting things you can do. The complete integration, get all the BMS points hooked up and tied in, and then it becomes much faster. And at the same time, you can continue working on the structure while we're doing MEP plants, off-site. I actually had a question for you, Tim. Have you done a lot of work with pouring on site? Is that something that you guys do, or is it still mostly free?
Yeah, no, we don't pour anything on site. We pour all of our product at one of our 6 plants strategically located across the U.S. Yeah, I'm in business development now, sorry. So, yeah, we pour everything at our plants and then ship it there. Well, like you were saying, being able to work on some of these other aspects of the project while the site's still being cleared, while the foundations are being poured, that's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
We're in very early. The best value that we provide is when we're in very early, and that's probably a question I'm going to bring up here in a minute. Are there other areas where it would behoove the team to have partners engage very early in the design stages? But I'll get to that in a minute. But yes, to answer your question, we don't make widgets. Everything is engineered and designed specifically for the project.
Great.
Okay. Next question. Do you guys see any differences since you're located across the U.S.? I heard 8, 9 different locations, maybe even more in some instances. Do you see any differences in the supply chain challenges from region to region? Like you're able to get certain products, maybe include superstructure. Sorry, I got distracted by the pole here. Butterfly flew by my window, so I got distracted. So do you see any differences in the supply chain challenges from region to region? Like I was saying, maybe superstructure, equipment, or some regions it's easier to get certain equipment products. Or is it the same across the board?
I think for us, it's like you said, it's superstructure, it's building. As you standardize your supply chain and build stuff off site, then the structure and the site work, and then the structure becomes, the critical path. And, if it's precast or if it's steel, a lot of that decision has to do with geography. And,
Right.
Some places have strong precasters, all your markets. And some places like out west where it's seismic, they just don't build precast, and then you're steel and you're competing with everybody else for the steel. So as you start to figure out your equipment, then your building actually starts to play into your delivery times, and that is I think that's very site specific and region specific.
Yeah, what we've seen is some of the more competitive markets like Ashburn and Lithia Springs area. The labor pool is more of a challenge than anything, and that was pre-COVID. Post-COVID, it's hard to even say right now. It's really hard to settle everything out. So in terms of how the labor is going to work out, there's a lot of construction going on, a lot of data center construction going on still. One of the rare things going on in this marketplace, but yet the requirements are disparate in each site. So you've had the large build in both of those 2 regions. Coupled with COVID, it makes quite a bit of a challenge in terms of supplying labor.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen much on a regional basis. Of course, we're not, doing much in California or Northern Virginia at the moment. What we have really seen is, the impact of COVID on getting startup technicians in, getting commissioning agents in from
Right.
possibly hotspots. And then, as John said, limiting the size of the crew to meet the current restrictions in that given area.
Yeah. One of the things, we're working with a New York-based consulting firm and trying to get some of their technicians, they got to quarantine to some of the sites and send them to, right? So they can't even go back if they're New York-based for 14 days. So it's kind of interesting dynamic that we're dealing with there.
Yeah, like we were talking about yesterday, a lot of interesting stuff's happening now that we didn't used to do. We're seeing virtual factory witness tests because people just can't travel, and that wasn't something we saw a year ago. you know, it'll be interesting to see how much of that actually, when this whole thing's over, if it's ever over, how much of that actually stays. People look at it and say, you know, that wasn't the world's worst idea. I didn't send 10 guys to the factory. I sent 2 guys to the factory, and it cost me, you know, 20% of what it would. That wasn't the world's worst idea. So it'll be interesting to see what lasting effects this will. I mean, the effects now are what they are, but what lasting effects it'll have on the way we do construction going forward.
Yeah. And on that lines, I mean, even how project management takes place, right? So I was involved with a large hyperscaler build out, and this is years ago, and they spent a ton of money just on the AV situation. What was fascinating about it is the engineering project manager, I think he went to the site twice. He was able to use the, you know, as we're using Zoom now and Skype and all these other tools, they were using that, you know, 10 years ago, building out these sites. And it was fascinating how much information you could gather and how well you could interface with the construction teams who were present at the site, of course, but then also utilizing video content and photo taking of various locations was really pretty far-reaching at the time. I think that's the new norm now. It took COVID for this to kind of come about into our industry.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, and it really puts a lot more pressure on the site teams. I mean, smaller builds, it's always been, you know, standard operating procedure to put the, you know, younger, less experienced teams on them, and that's how guys learned. Once or twice a week, the more experienced guys from the regional offices would fly in and help them out. And, you know, that's not happening now, and it's putting a lot more pressure on the guys on the site.
Yeah.
Yes, good points, guys. Rick, as you said, and you as well, John, what are the lasting effects going to be? And you know, one of the things I heard for years in construction is how we haven't utilized technology to increase productivity, to just change the way we do things. And I think COVID is kind of forcing our hand to use that technology. And I think a lot of pretty neat things are going to come out of this, where not a great way to get there, but
yeah,
the end may be good. So anything to add there, Danny?
No, I would just echo the same thing. You know, we've got a project that we're looking to kick off in the Minneapolis market, and you know, we're exploring our options there as well. You know, personally, I was on the road, you know, every week to a different city, a different construction project, and you know, we're looking to take advantage of technology as well, putting up some live construction cams, travel costs, and still being able to keep our pulse on the project.
Yeah, it's also, you know, it's causing other dynamics to take place as well. So some of the interesting things, like we're focused now, is not just building, but also partnering and buying existing assets. So that's also, those are options that, you know, it's always better to go out and do a greenfield if you had the time and money, so you can set up your own standards. But we're seeing more and more of a partnershiping or merger acquisition process really come into play as well.
Absolutely. All right, I want to get back to something I brought up just a minute ago, and then I'll phrase it this way. Is it valuable, because talking about speed to market, being able to get out there as quick as absolutely possible, is it valuable to have a team of, I'll call it pre-selected partners, in place during the early stages of design in order to improve speed to market?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
yeah, I'll let you kick that one off. But
what's that?
Over that one. I'll let Danny kick that off because I'm afraid I'm going to talk too long.
No, it's essential. You know, we have adopted some construction standards and specs, and to be able to have the same set of architects, the same engineering crew, you know, it really needs to turn into a process improvement and not a redesign from one site to another. And that's where we're focused today. You know, we've got a construction standard specification package that we've put together. As we go through this build, we'll, you know, find out where we're getting RFIs and other questions. And then at the end of the build, sit down and say, okay, what do we need to do to enhance the specs, enhance the drawings to avoid these questions going forward? and ultimately, speed up the process in general. So having that consistency and the same team, I think is critical in terms of speed to market.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, having trusted partnerships in many ways, right? Trusted partnerships both with your consultants and with your contractors, but also, as a colo provider with our customers, trying to establish the fact that they have a level of comfort that we're going to build and design to the expectations that they're used to seeing or want to see. So it's about establishing, yourself as a trusted partner, as well as having trusted partners in the bank to work with. We're all over the country, and we used a single consulting firm as our primary guiding light, as I like to call it. Applying kind of an even thought process across all the sites. But in the meantime, there's going to be other projects where it's going to be more efficient and more effective for us to use local to make that happen for each specific sites. Particularly internationally, where we're doing projects there as well, but still having the same overarching thought process that we can apply, specifications and whatnot. So, go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys said. As much as we want to standardize on design, and we say that our designs are standard, every site has its specific challenges, and having your partners there, GCs and everybody there during the design assist of the schematic processes, that's so important, because otherwise you're missing feedback from valuable people that worked with you before and know what you're trying to accomplish.
Right.
Yeah, from a subcontractor side, as I said, I was in operations for 21 years and would chuckle when I heard that, we've got the same design. It's going to be exactly the same as last time, knowing that it's not going to be exact. But it does help to have some semblance of what you did before. So
I've heard it described as the only thing that's the same is that we change it every time.
that's how it feels.
Good
That's
one.
how it feels. But in you guys' defense, technology is changing so quickly. You can't do things the way you were doing before. With on the mechanical side, the way you used to, everything used to have to be 50 degrees or 60 degrees or so, whatever it used to be, and now it's changing. So as that technology changes, it's obviously going to change your building. So we understand, but I still chuckle when I hear it, that everything's going to be the same. So, okay. So it's very valuable to have a team of partners from owners, customers, subcontractors, designers, to help speed of market. All right. Something I heard about and have heard about for a while now, there's an acronym for it, OFCI, Owner Furnished Contractor Installed Equipment. With the pandemic, with speed to market, with the increase of absorption in the data center market, are you guys seeing this, using it to your advantage, the OFCI?
Yes.
And where?
Yeah, definitely. It's part of our strategy. I think, it has to be part of everybody's strategy. It's certainly something we're embracing. Like talking about change, it's hopefully at least the equipment is one thing you can strive to keep the same. And I think the benefit of OFCI is you go through a process, you run a competition, but then you get a partner. Because, I feel like these equipment vendors, no matter who they are, they want to be successful just like we want to be successful. They don't want to be late. And the way you can help these guys help you is to partner with them, give them your pipeline, tell them what your needs are going to be, tell them, when you're going to need your equipment 2 and 3 years out so they can plan, you make commitments to each other. And that's really the way the industry's going, and that's why Stack's going.
Yeah, it removes some of the risk as well, right? Having the direct link with the owner is a good way to go. But then on the flip side of it too, for smaller builds, you need the expertise, or you need the experience of what the contractor can bring to the table as well, in terms of that. So there are times when it's absolutely essential to not go with an OFCI model, just because your project might be too small to fit in or get the materials that you're going to need, whereas the contractor's got some more wiggle room to work with on that. But for the most part, we adhere to an OFCI model.
Yeah, I think it's important when you talk about OFCI that from my perspective, whether it's a general contractor or myself putting an order in for a generator, for example, you know, if we both do that at the same time, the lead time's not going to change, right?
Yeah.
So from an OFCI perspective, there's a couple of things. You know, number one, we have a direct relationship with that partner. They know what our specifications are. They know what you know we're anticipating from a delivery perspective. But there's also an important part, and I think to get ahead of the curve and speed to market, you really have to have a stocking program along with that OFCI with your partner, right? That's how you get ahead of the curve. One kind of side note to that is that it does require a level of capital commitment from the company, right? I'm going to commit to buying 6 generators over the next year. You know, obviously my generator partner is going to say, great, we're more than happy to build them and stock them for you. You know, you've got X amount of time to use it or pay for it. And so there is a level of capital commitment that you have to do ahead of time with your partners to be able to fully leverage that speed to market initiative there.
Yeah, no, Danny's absolutely right. I mean, it's a partnership, right? It's an agreement between you and your strategic supply partner. You know, what's my lead time going to be? You know, how you know, what do you have to stock? What are you out? What am I going to commit to? It's definitely it's a partnership for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of dynamics you can play here as well. So, you know, having a portfolio to work with kind of gives you more options. And what I'm thinking of is, you know, if I'm doing a new build that requires 5 engines, I know I'm not going to need more than 2 engines for the first year, right? So the other 3 engines I might be able to deploy to other sites in the meantime that are also experiencing growth and might need to have more scalable growth. So there's advantages to having, you know, some width or some depth to deploy when we have that options. So sorry, Tim, I didn't mean to jump in on you.
No, that's fine. Anytime, that's fine. Have you guys seen the OFCI scope, I guess, increase? Like it used to just be generators and now it's chillers, it's this, it's this. How many items would you see that the owner handles? Is it 2? Is it 10? Is it, what is it?
I think it's 8 in our program, and it's what we call the long lead equipment. The stuff that has a long lead time and is critical path on the schedule that you're trying to take you're trying to take the schedule risk of that equipment off the equation or off the table, not part of the equation, and put it on permitting and the building and everything else. And it changes. It's not even just expensive equipment. It can just be long lead equipment. Like, I don't know if in the medium voltage transformer guy, but they're not real expensive, but they have long lead times.
Right.
Yeah. So is that list increase, or is it just a list that'll probably never increase or never decrease? It's just, it is what it is because it's critical path.
There's a lot of diminishing returns, right? So adding more OFCI stuff doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, it's more for you to manage as the owner, right? There's more specifications, more equipment that you have to be monitoring and tracking and trending. So, yeah.
I think it'll increase. I think we actively try to increase it because we look at it as a way, you know, unlike if you hire a GC, contract with him and he buys their equipment for that build, you can leverage your entire pipeline, your next 2 or 3 years of portfolio if you're willing to make an equipment, which is a lot bigger build. And you know, you feel like you can leverage that to get better terms from suppliers. So you know, we look at it all and see if it does it make sense to put it into our OFC program or does it not make sense? You know, some stuff isn't just worth it. It's a lot of work these OFCI programs are. They really are. To manage the whole process, and now you're in between the equipment vendor and the contractor and everybody else. So you don't want too much in there because, you know, if you have to have 3 full-time guys on your staff to do it, you're almost eating up your savings.
Yeah.
There's a sweet point in there that for equipment that makes sense.
So all the general contractors out there, when you said it's a lot of work, they're out there nodding, yes, it is.
But that's how they're justifying their equipment fees. But yeah, no, it is a lot of work. Well, I'll be the first one to admit it. They've been earning their fees all along.
Yeah, I think for the most part, it's a core set of equipment, right? We all know generators are long lead, chillers, switchgear. It's those sort of things. I mean, right now we're not necessarily worried about a PDU that can be delivered in 6 to 8 weeks, but let that PDU, go to 12 to 14 weeks, and you
Yeah,
can add that to the OFCI list, right?
yeah.
So that's a good point. Have you guys seen lead times on the generators, PUs, you name it, on the OFCI? Have you seen that increase? And what do you think the cause of it is? Was it the absorption, pandemic, both? What do you think?
Everything. Lead
Yeah.
times are all over the place, no matter who you ask. Like if you're laughing, it could be 12. It could be 12 weeks today, and tomorrow can be, I don't know, 24 weeks for whatever reason. It has to do with a lot of it's just like you said, absorption. People,
Yeah.
everyone's really busy. Everyone's putting in a lot of orders, and these factories are only so big.
Yeah, and like I said, the space limitations are causing it. And then, the little known aspect that anybody talks about is there's still pieces that have to be delivered from abroad, right? So you might be bending your own metal, but that little printed circuit board might be coming from overseas. So, and
Right.
also, and restrictions in terms of that. So.
Yeah, and there's bottlenecks in the supply chain, like Danny was talking about yesterday. Generators, those guys can build a lot of generators really fast. They have big, huge lines, but our generators have to go to a packager. And there aren't many packagers around, and they're small little shops, and the throughput of their shops is, I don't know, I bet you it's 10% of the throughput of the generator manufacturers, factories.
Right.
Yeah, you'd mentioned a single component. We fully agree on the generator packaging. That has been an issue I've seen over the last probably 4 years. And that generator packaging is still an issue today. But to your point about some of the subcomponents, we had an issue where we did in fact order some PDUs here recently with branch circuit monitoring. And it turns out that the branch circuit monitoring strips came from China. And so, we had probably a 4 to 6 week delay just being able to get that. Now, luckily it wasn't a critical component. We were able to commission and come back and install those in a live environment and test just the branch circuit monitoring. But that's a great example of how one component can throw off something that
Right.
is normally a 6 week issue.
And that's happening to us at the site level. So the same thing is happening for the manufacturers as well, right? On their assembly lines, there's that one component that might be coming from abroad that we have to wait for that to come through.
Yeah, I think hopefully the manufacturers, just like we're learning stuff, we're learning how to build in the global pandemic. Hopefully the manufacturers are learning where their supply chains have little problems in it, and they start spending more time trying to figure out what's an alternative product or an alternative source if they have to use that specific product.
I mean, and that's one of the things we're learning from this is the old just-in-time mentality, which we've all believed. I mean, I'm a accolade of that. I'd rather somebody else held my inventory than I had my own, but not anymore, right?
Right.
Yeah. There was quite a while there. There was a few months there. We just thought I may never be able to get product again. Yeah. So.
All right, guys. Well, awesome discussion so far. We have a ton of audience questions, so I do want to get some of these. So let's jump in here. First question was, what is your take on smaller data centers given the increased amount of online activity since COVID? Anyone want to respond to that? I mean, it's not really your platforms, I guess, overall. You guys are building pretty massive facilities, but taking that a little bit further, do you anticipate the future of the sector going a little bit smaller, or is it still going to have these massive data centers all around?
I don't think smaller is really the answer to much. I mean, unfortunately, data centers, I think, are a lot of things. I mean, what really matters is what it costs to build them, and it's a lot more money to build a smaller data center than to build a larger data center.
Yeah, there is, but there's also the 5G thing, which has been kind of put on hold, but it's still well on its way. It's not going away. And then other projects like supernodes are starting to come out, right? So we're seeing more and more asks for a 300 kW deployment in different locations, which is good, and it fits well into the co-location model. But sometimes people want to be right there in the heart of the city, so we're seeing lots of requests around that as well. But I'll let you speak, Danny.
I mean, I would agree. I think, you know, from a speed to market perspective, regardless of the size of data center, it needs to be a similar approach to what we talked about today. In terms of data center sizing in general, yeah, I think it's going to kind of be all over the map for a little bit as edge deploys and there's more of a need for regional centers. You know, I think we'll see an increase in smaller data centers popping up.
Yeah, for that area. At the same time, you know, hyperscalers are on fire right now. Everybody wants to be in the cloud at this stage of the game. So.
Right. Yeah. So it'll be obviously a mix, but maybe there's specific strategies for each, obviously, I guess. Next question we got here. How often do you as owners tune your schedule for early turnover of electrical room spaces? You know, prioritizing dried in targeted rooms, being ready for, you know, over balance of building. Tough one.
I'll say this, early.
Yeah.
I mean, we set aggressive schedules to begin with. If I could turn one over early, I would be ecstatic. But typically our schedule is very aggressive and we're pushing to get things done as fast as possible.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure what early actually means. Like I said, our schedules are aggressive. I mean, we push more and more to get the client into the room and let him start his build out in parallel with our build out, which is problematic as everybody knows, but it's, you know, everything's aggressive already.
Gotcha. Okay, well, here's one more in line with the with specific supply chain. What do you see as the biggest bottleneck challenging on-site and field construction of new data centers?
Labor? Maybe?
Labor. That's exactly it. Labor.
Workforce?
Yeah, workforce, yeah.
Any strategies that you guys have for specifically, you know, having enough of the right people on board from the get-go? Or do you find that you guys are kind of pivoting midway through a project to get more staff on board?
Yeah, I mean that's where your partners come in, and you know, when you're doing your pre-construction and your bidding. I mean, we ask more and more questions now about, you know, what's the labor like in the market, especially when you go to a new market. What's the labor like? How many of them do you have? How many travelers are there? I mean, you just got to ask the right questions, and hopefully you get the right partners, and you know, hopefully it performs for you. I mean, sometimes if you're halfway through, there's not a lot you can do.
Yeah, I mean that is exactly it. We have to trust. I mean, that's what the contractor's job is. That's his job, right? So
You do as much offsite as possible.
I agree with that, Tim.
Yeah. Having said that, though, I mean, there's a lot of great contractors in the markets where they build a lot of data centers: Ashburn, Dallas, Chicago, Oregon, Silicon Valley. I think a lot of it's when you get to the smaller, maybe tier 2 markets where there just aren't that many, you know, big mechanical electrical guys that build data centers.
Yeah, we've looked at some electrical contractors that are doing prefab and literally shipping their pipes pre-bent, right? They're doing BIM modeling, setting that up, driving that, and then just everything's all ready for. They can do in-wall work, they can do all their conduit work. They can even have wires pulled through if they want. So it's been a lot of fun watching a relatively stoic industry, particularly electrical trades, right? Start to be innovative and start to really come up with ways, because they're suffering from the same thing. They can't get as many people into the field. So simplifying the process and streamlining it is really making a big difference.
Yeah, the big guys fab shops now are just incredible how much work they do and how they track it and package it and send it to the site every day in the subformats. They're making so much progress.
It's like IKEA instructions for building data centers.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something of tomorrow. Tim, how about you? How often are you getting brought into jobs like midway through? Is it typically at the very beginning, or is it, I mean, you know, kind of tapping off that last question?
We're brought on early typically, because you've got to know what type of structure you're going to have, the weight of the structure, and how we can benefit. And our best partners bring us in at the very beginning so that we can help them decide which way to go. A lot of times, if the architect has already spent all their money on the structure and they bring us in and we go, we can do it this way. This is a better way. It's going to save you time, going to save you money. You're going to have to get the architect to redraw it. But the earlier we can be brought in, the better off we are. So typically we're brought in very early when it's just being thought about.
Gotcha. And yeah, tapping on the workforce issue. You know, we had a whole webinar on this with a really great cast as well. What's being done to address the diversity of construction today and in the future?
I can jump in on that.
Sure.
We're a plant first and foremost, right? Because we do all of our work and then we ship it to the site. And one of the things that we're finding is the female workforce is very more open to coming to a plant than they are to a job site. And maybe not for the reasons you may think, but one driving force that we see is that they know when they're coming to work. They don't have to travel very far because typically they're very close. So they can still go pick up their, do whatever they need to do at the end of the day. Whereas if they have to travel and go out of town, it's not as enticing, not as, doesn't give them the opportunities to have the life that they want, but they'll come to a plant and work. Our female workforce has shot up tremendously over the past couple of years, just for that reason.
That's super interesting. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't heard that. It's interesting. Any of you guys on
Makes sense.
So, I'm sorry, Adam, what was that?
Oh, how about you guys in the field? You know, augmenting that from where you guys sit.
Well, I think all of the contractors now are recognizing that and facing it, and they all have, at least all of them I know of, have some sort of program in, you know, one form or the other of you know, encouraging young kids to go into the trade. I mean, that's what has to happen now. That the unions have to be, you know, good or better at recruiting, and the GCs and all the contractors just have to supplement or find ways to get kids to go into the trade, so that as the workforce gets older and grays, you know, there's people there to take it up. And I think it's working. I really think it's happening.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a slow process either way, but you know, everyone's got to take steps.
Yeah.
So back on supply chain, do you guys see setbacks in supply chain due to COVID? And you know, as it relates to materials like steel and fabrication, do you anticipate construction costs will be impacted or increase as a result, or have they already?
I'm kind of, I mean, yes, that's what we're all thinking, is that the costs are going to go up with the tariffs and whatnot. But also, I think there's efficiencies in construction that are starting to come into play right now that are helping us to drive costs down and to expedite timelines as well. Again, that's one of the benefits of the offsite construction, is there's a lot of efficiency associated with that. And I think we're going to see, I guess it'll be kind of a transecting lines of cost of raw materials. So, I mean, even if you double the cost, this is not a good explanation, but even if you double the cost of steel, it doesn't double the cost of construction, right? Although a lot of contractors will have you believe that. It's a mental change in the cost for the actual construction if your contractor isn't using that as a lever to drive his price up. So.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? Because, you know, data centers are speeding up, not slowing down, but there's a lot of segments of the construction market that are slowing down. So you'd have a hard time convincing me that, you know, steel's going up, because I'm not competing with the Class A office building down the road or you know, some other industry, because they're slowing down. If you ask me, my steel should be cheaper.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
Gotcha. All right, well, we are running on time here, so I'll ask kind of like one futuristic question with some stuff that's been in the news. One of our viewers was reading that Microsoft is adapting Tesla battery backup modules and using those rather than generators, or that's their goal, potentially. Do you guys see the market shifting to follow?
In certain states, beyond a question of a doubt. I think the licensing time, the permitting time for a new generator in California, I don't know, what is it, like a year and a half? You know, so if you can come up with some alternative, it's going to be very, very desirable. And then if you're, you know, redundant in your application, really being able to run in generators for 2 days stops losing its importance, right? So yeah, it's very viable for that thought process. We become more and more application redundant. Our data centers will become less and less of the proverbial brick outhouse, right?
Yeah, no, I think, you know, mostly at seminars and events and stuff, but I'm starting to see more and more people talking about a solution where the whole building's basically on 5 minutes of battery as opposed to being on generators. I think 10 or 15 years, we're going to be seeing a lot of that.
Interesting. Danny, final thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would agree with the trend. I have to say that personally, I'm old school, and when it comes to, for example, UPS batteries and generators, that's essentially the heartbeat of the data center. And while new technology is evolving, I'm going with the tried and true. Lithium ion is a good example of that. I need a few more years and actually get into a refresh cycle before I can consider embracing that.
Danny's going to be able to keep his job a lot longer than me.
Playing it safe, man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, once again, another solid discussion, and I'd like to thank today's distinguished speakers and our attendees for viewing at home, and our lead sponsor, Tyndall Corporation. We hope you'll all join us for our next webinar this Thursday, August 13th at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, exploring the future of efficiency, sustainability, and energy management, and featuring the hyperscale community, including Google, Microsoft, and Oracle. We'll see you all soon, and thanks for tuning in.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.